So I have rewritten this since last week to make it even more compact and more easily understood. All of our sprite makers now use a sprite maker module, which they call. And to make any individual red zombie, green zombie, the archer, is as simple as 30 lines of code, or approximately that long. And you can clearly see the first time you walk through it how this works. So, for example, the red zombie, I include the graphics sheet and the information file from Texture Packer. I pull out the details about the sheet into an image sheet. And then I set up a blank sequence data table. And then I know that this one has a number of different directions, north, south, east, west, northeast, etc. And then the animations that I want are walking, disintegrate, attack, and then hit. Walking, those animations each have 8 frames. I want it to take 800 milliseconds to play it, and I want them to play in a loop forever. So loops 0 means loop forever. The disintegrate has 9 frames. I want it to play in 900 milliseconds, and I want it to loop one time and stop. Attack, 11 frames, 1100 milliseconds. You get the idea. And so what I do is I take my table of directions, my table of animations with additional details, and I feed them into the generate sequence function from Sprite Maker, which you can take a look at, which does, let's just call it a little bit of magic, and creates those tables of subtables in the correct format, and then spits them out. And then I simply say if they want to create a zombie or archer, it calls the Sprite Maker create function and passes in the appropriate image sheet and sequence data table, which I generated above, and it's done. So I don't think this is going to clarify things greatly for people, but what I've given people is a very simple example they can look at that's outside of the context of the game, and they can compare that side by side to the simpler one, which was Pinky.
Well, I think the overall concept, right, is pretty easy to understand. Is that if you are going to write the code yourself and match up the sequences, then it's not that big a deal. But once you get to a sprite sheet that has 300 images, that becomes a much more tedious manual process. So you've created a tool to automate that process. So I mean, I think it's pretty straightforward. I mean, going through the code and knowing that the nuts and bolts of it is probably a different conversation, but conceptually, I think it makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, Texture Packer 1 isn't going to generate these things in the order that you would expect every time. I mean, it's great. I love the tool, but that's one of the things it does, and it's based on the alphabetized naming system of the textures themselves. So if the textures don't have good names, the sequence will come out in some strange order. However, you can easily extract that as long as you understand the structure and order of the names yourself. And so what I did was studied Reiner's textures, and I said, oh, I know how to break this down into parts. I'll break it down into parts and simply use an algorithm to generate the texture sequence I need based on my knowledge of the list of names.
Okay, so what I think I hear there then is that if you come across a different set of assets that are not organized in the same way that the Reiner stuff is, you may run into issues. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what I'm saying, exactly. What you need to do is you can't just there's no single solution that works for all problems. You need to understand the fundamentals, which is you look at simple and understand the basic concepts of how to set up sequence data. And once you understand that, then you're ready to go and tackle large sets of textures that are used in animations that may have various names and rules for ordering, and you have to understand the basics, and then you have to look at the more complicated one and understand where that person was coming from when they made that set of textures.
Stephen, do you guys can you share? Do you guys have specialized tools? I mean, you don't give us details, but just a yay or nay that you have specialized tools in your game development for problems like this, for sequencing and animations. Uh-oh.
Well, no, there's noise in the background. That's all. We have artists, so they would be the ones to ask.
So they handle all that stuff, making sure that the naming is correct and that everything matches up and that things can be put into sequence easily.
Yeah, I'm sure they've got a process because we've already done a game before and we would have worked out some issues with that. So.
Okay. But you're not 100% sure if you have a specialized tool for that, or if you have, you have to create something in house, or was it something off the shelf that you guys use?
We've got a lot. It's an art thing, so I'm
okay. That's okay. I know that's on the art side. You don't do.
So, Stephen, I was going to say that to answer Charles's question to you is, when I've worked with companies, generally the way we did it is I would create a rule set, and they would give it to their artists, like naming conventions and orders and stuff, and then the artist would follow that and give me feedback on, I need this or I need that. And we'd work in concert until we had our special naming convention and sequence of doing these things, so that it was easy to just pump them out. But the problem for me is when I tell people on this show, here's how you do it, they're going to go, okay, Reiner's works this way, but then somebody else's, they work a different way, and everybody thinks differently when they create these assets. So I can't create a single universal solution, unfortunately, that just figures out the right sequence for all these.
But I think that's important to know, though. I mean, it's like just knowing it, right? Just knowing that when you get to this point, here's what you're going to encounter. I think saves people a lot of stress and time, because now they understand everything that's involved in the production of the thing. So, so yeah, it's good to know.
Actually, you made me think of something. People should definitely take a look at this and experiment with this, and then go grab some of other Reiner's packs and go through the sequence, because what they're going to find is even Reiner did not follow his own naming rules all the time. So I think it's going to be a really good lesson for people who are trying to learn how to make sprites. Just play around with as many Reiner's kits and this base code that I've given you until you understand the concept, because you come out of there after you're doing 5 or 6 and you will have a solid grasp of how this works.
And also, I mean, anybody who's new to the Corona, there are sample apps that come when you download the SDK. You can break open those and look at those as well. So the assets have been provided. The code is there. The documentation, if you go to the docs, docs.coronalabs.com, you can find documentation on it, and it talks about the sequencing, steps for sequencing and things like that. So it doesn't go into how to automatically sequence 300 individual frames, but it covers that concept just like you did with the simple Pinky version. So
yeah, I mean, you gotta. I think I've said it before, but the whole sprite making thing is so complicated, and there's so many options that you got to work through it until you understand each individual one. You can't just expect people to sort of pick it up and go, yeah, that's how it works.
And also, as a side note on that last example, or not the last example, but the previous, the simple example, you were showing that the idle animation only had 1 frame, and somebody might ask, well, why is that I only have 1 frame and the other animations have multiple frames? And the simple answer to that is that, well, that's just the way that was, right? The artist decided that the character would just simply stand there, whereas the characters you have on screen right now, the idle state is there's a little bit of motion to it.
He's got like 8 frames where his arm's moving back and forth.
Yeah, so he's standing there, but he's not standing there motionless.
He's doing the what's this? There's a name for this in 3D games, which is the I can't remember. If anybody remember it, there's a special name for the animation where he stands there, but he's moving a little bit. So
the hero pose.
What? Say again?
The hero pose or the vine pose? Or?
Yeah, I can't remember. That's not it. That's not the one I'm thinking of, anyways.
Okay.
No, not your bad. It's fine. It's all right. I don't remember it either. Okay, so I've totally run us out of time, but I'm going to do it anyways. We're gonna take a quick tour of this game. I just want we're going to keep going on this next week, obviously, but I won't be wasting anybody's time next week. More side discussions are going to go right into the game. But
I would hardly call any of this a waste of time.
Well, it's.
I know you want to be further down the road.
But I had my own personal goals for the show, and I'm way behind my goals. So, when you get into it, it's really hard to stay on track with timing. Or to know how long it's going to take.